Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am joined by Matt O'Neill. Matt, tell us who you are and what you do.
Xander, I am so freaking jacked to be here, man. I'm feeling epic right now. Dude, it's an honor. I am a happiness expert, and I say this because at this point, I've had over 100,000 people consume my content on how to live a happier life. You know, I've written the Good Mood Revolution book. I have the Good Mood Revolution podcast, but it's not just a, coach speak. This is real world tested stuff. I've got 80 employees.
Wow.
And with 80 employees is a tremendous amount of people who are unhappy. We have had over 5,000 clients, and there's been a lot of them who aren't happy. And so this puts a strain on our own happiness. And at the same time, I'm juggling an awesome family, but a big family. We've got 4 young kids under the age of 10. And so life can be really busy, and it can feel really chaotic, and it can feel kind of out of control for all of us.
Absolutely.
And when we're going through a big life and problems pop up, it's like, man, how can I be happy when this is happening? How can I be happy when we have a health challenge? Well, here's the thing. Happiness is a choice. And that's what I teach. I teach happiness is a choice. And there's just really 8 things that get in the way of that choice. And those are the 8 primary bad mood emotions. And I teach how to get out of each of those emotions and choose happiness again.
That's awesome. And Matt, I'm all about, that happiness is definitely a choice. And, in my own life, I absolutely live that. I remember years ago, I was taking a coaching course, and we had to read books, and I read, I can't tell you anything more than I took this one little nugget out of a book, but I guess that's the whole point of reading a book. If you take one thing away out of a 200-page book, you prove that author was successful. But I believe it's called The Buddhist and the Diamond Cutter or something like that. Anyway, what I wanted to share was in Buddhism, there's this idea that things are not inherently, things aren't good or bad, right? They're inherently the way they are. However, how we choose to look at it. And the example I always like to use with people is, I'm in California, the sun is out. I think that's a good thing. Now, inherently, the sun being out isn't good or bad. Now, if we're in a drought and I'm a farmer, then the sun being out, I interpret that as not being good because it's killing my crops. So, it's that whole idea of the sun being out isn't good or bad. It's how we see it. I think the things that happen in our life are not necessarily good or bad. It's how we choose to interpret them. Yes, there are bad things that happen in life. I certainly have experienced some of those. But even in those, I have a choice. And I think choice is so powerful.
Yeah, man. And I know a little bit about your story. Just reading the name of your book about the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
It brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, thank you.
And so, and I also heard you talk about how you just can't have an answer to some questions.
Yeah.
And that there's something, and that was a choice that you made. Now, sometimes I think we're given grace. And I heard you telling a story on your podcast about how you were coming over a highway and you remember exactly where you were on the highway.
Yeah.
And an insight came to you that said, you're never going to know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you have to let this go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I tell that story. I did tell that story.
So we have a choice in that moment too. And you were given grace. that insight that was given to you was given by something greater than you. It didn't come from your own brain. It came from something else, something beyond you. And we have a choice when we're given that grace to either accept it for the grace that it is and to say, I'm going to accept this teaching. It's what I need right now in order for me to move forward in a positive way, and then go start the Epic Begins with One Step Forward podcast and
Yeah.
write books that are helping people going through terrible times. Or I'm going to reject this grace and continue to choose to wallow in my suffering of not knowing and wishing that things were different. And well, I think what you and your family had to endure is something that I wouldn't wish for anyone. I think that your understanding as you came through it and what you've done to make the world a more beautiful place is the best anyone could possibly do with that situation. And that is how we choose happiness.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for all of those kind words. When I talk about my sister Lucy and I talk about the work that I do and my family does, I like to tell people that it feels so much better to celebrate the rainbow that was her life and do good things in her memory versus just focusing on the dot at the end of the rainbow that was her death. Because my sister lived for 30 years. There's this vibrant, beautiful life. She was an awesome person. Why shouldn't I celebrate that? It feels so much better, let me tell you.
Yes.
Be doing good things.
This is what I'm saying is you've got this beautiful perspective and you're using your choice to choose the beauty of the perspective. And one of the 8 bad moods that gets in the way of our happiness is sadness. It's grieving what we've lost. And look, sadness is beautiful too. It tells us how much we loved. The more we love somebody, the more we grieve when they're no longer with us. It's 2 sides of the same coin. However, we can grieve with gratitude, as you beautifully put, that here's the reality. We are not guaranteed any time with people we love.
No,
it's not guaranteed. We're not entitled to it. I'm not entitled to live another 10 years with my wife. I'm not entitled to be my children's dad when I walk them down the aisle. I'm gifted time with my wife. I'm gifted time with my kids. You and your family were gifted 30 beautiful years with your sister, and you recognize that. And now these are perspectives that allow us to get back into happiness after times get tough.
absolutely. And certainly I'm on an epic journey with the loss of my sister. And every day I make a choice whether I want to talk about her or not. And I think that's an important part for people who may be grieving is on a given day, it just may not be a day that you want to talk about your loss, but it doesn't mean that you never want to talk about it. And my experience was lots of people knew about my loss. It was very public. It was all over the papers and on the news and stuff. And when I went back to work, people came by and they'd sort of stop at my cubicle, but then they'd move on. I'm a highly social person, so people not talking to me was like torturous, honestly.
Right.
And I put up a sign that said, "It's okay to talk to me."
It's so funny, man.
And sadly, we here in America, we treat death as if it's the most communicable disease. So if we acknowledge it, we may catch it and stuff. And it's not. And what I tell people all the time is, look, I don't have a miracle sentence that will make it better for you, and you don't have a miracle sentence for me. But that's okay. There is a lot of healing that happens when our grief is acknowledged on both sides. And there were lots of people who came to my sister's funeral and were standing in the receiving line. And before I went through that, I always thought a receiving line was a unbelievably torturous thing. And why the heck are we doing that, right? But once I went through it and was honestly on the receiving end, myself and my family we felt seen, we felt heard, and we weren't as worn down as we thought we were going to be. In fact, I felt a little more energized. And I realized in that moment that what that was everyone needed their grief to be acknowledged. And there is something so powerful about having your loss acknowledged. And there were all these people who knew Lucy and knew my family and wanted their grief. They wanted to be able to say, I too feel this loss. And it was really powerful.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And you are an inspiration to me, because you have turned something extremely painful that you've went through into a source of inspiration and healing for so many other people. So I just wanted to acknowledge you and applaud you for turning that pain into a purpose and making the world a better place after a really dark experience.
Well,
Now,
thank you.
typically, I teach happiness with much lighter experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get back to the happiness. We seem to have gone down the depth road here.
But I just love going into someone who's learned how to make an epic life after a really dark experience. They're the heroes in our world, and I just wanted to acknowledge you on that before we got started here,
Sure.
because most of the time, what we do is we make a mountain out of a molehill. And we get all bent out of shape over things that are not life and death. However, we treat them like they are.
Yes.
Right? Like we're having a financial problem, or we're having an issue at work, or we lost our job, or we're having relationship strain. And it consumes our whole life, and it torpedoes our happiness. And it really doesn't need to. And so what I teach is how to choose happiness and get out of these bad mood emotions when things are not extreme, on the extremes of loss and pain.
Right.
And
yeah. One of the, things I talk about in my book, and it's sort of a ongoing sort of segment in my podcast, is what I call epic unexpected. So sometimes I'm talking to other people about sibling loss or loss, but I'm also talking about other life events that happen that change your life. Back in October 2022, I crashed on my mountain bike and shattered my shoulder and broke my humerus pretty badly. I had to have surgery. I had to go in for another surgery because I broke the titanium plate in my arm because the humeral fracture didn't heal. It's affected me a little. I'm not back on my mountain bike yet, but I'm back on my road bike and life is good. I don't have 100%, range of motion in my shoulder, but I'm doing okay and I'm not in pain. But when that happened, Matt, I treated the whole thing of like, yeah, wow, I had this huge accident, but look at the opportunities I have to learn about how I heal, how I deal with adversity, how I'm going to have to make adaptations. And I think how we deal with those unexpected things in our life. Yeah, I've been all the different words for getting laid off, reduced in force, downsized, outsourced, yeah, and it stinks. But what I personally did was like, all right, now I got to get back on the horse. I got to go find what my next adventure is.
So you just talked about two of the positive moods I write about in my book. And in fact, we're very in sync here. I wrote my chapter on choosing responsibility about how I tore my labrum in my left shoulder.
Sure.
And I start out with the story of I'm playing basketball with a new group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a few years ago, and maybe 2 years ago. I'm playing basketball with this new group of guys, and I kind of want to impress them because I want to get into this game. I want to be a regular in the game. And so I play really tight defense, and I'm trying to do the best I can for my team to win. Well, I'm playing against the most aggressive player. And
Mhm.
he doesn't like that I'm playing really tight defense. And
Sure.
he also wants to show me that he's the alpha
Sure.
and to teach me a lesson. And so I steal the ball from him and he doesn't like that. And so
Hmm.
he calls a foul on me. And I'm like, okay, here's the ball. I steal the ball again, and now he's really pissed. And
Yeah.
he calls a foul on me. And at this time I say something back. I say, those were two steals. Those weren't two fouls.
Yeah.
The next time down the court, he runs into me so hard that I get thrown off of my feet and
Yeah.
I put my left arm down to brace for the fall.
Yeah.
And that's when I tear the labrum.
Oh,
And a labrum isn't something that you can fix. They
nope.
can do they can do surgery, but the surgery doesn't put your shoulder back the way that it was. It's just it just is what it is. Like,
Yeah. No, I absolutely feel you, Matt.
yeah, because you've been through this.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
the pain is so great. I can't lift a basketball with this arm anymore. Like it's
Oh,
just the basketball's too heavy to lift. I can't do a single push up. I'm struggling to pick my kids up. I've got young kids
sure.
and I'm feeling like a total victim, right? Like man, why did that guy have to hit me?
Yeah.
You know, and as I'm feeling like a victim, I'm suffering. And this is one of the keys to happiness is that anytime we take the stance of a victim, whether we have justification or not, we're not happy. Victims always suffer. Now, did the guy need to hit me and tear that labrum? No. Was I a victim? Probably, right? Like his aggression was unwarranted. However, choosing to think that way, as long as I stayed there feeling like a victim, was going to perpetuate my suffering. And, so what did I decide to do? I said, okay, well, if victims suffer, I'm going to be the opposite of a victim. I'm going to be responsible.
Right.
I'm going to take full responsibility for the situation. Did I come in playing as aggressive as I could? Yeah. Did I not know that I was playing against the most aggressive guy? I didn't, but maybe I could have picked that up by the first time I took the ball. And he told me with his actions and his words, this isn't going to go in well for you.
Yeah.
Right. So I could take some responsibility for the way I showed up in that interaction. Doing that starts to lessen how upset I feel about it. I say
Mhm.
I had some responsibility in creating this. But ultimately, even if we're a full-on victim, and the other day I was driving in my car with my family and we get T-boned by somebody looking at their phone. Like they're going 40 miles an hour. Our
Yeah.
car got hit so hard we went up on two wheels. Literally zero I could do to prevent that.
Sure.
In that case, my only responsibility was I chose to drive a car. So in situations where you're saying, okay, I really cannot take even the slightest bit of responsibility in this, we still get to choose response ability. That maybe we weren't responsible for what happened, but we are certainly responsible for making the best of what we got.
Right.
And in the case of my shoulder, when I chose to take responsibility for my shoulder, I started to do everything that you just talked about. I went and saw 3 different specialists. I went and saw physical therapists. I went and I hired the best personal trainer who worked with the USA women's soccer team that won gold
Hmm.
medal. And I said, dude, you know joints and how to get athletes back on the field better than anyone. Would you please work with me? He took me on as a client. It took me 6 months of intense rehab, but at the end of 6 months, I was doing 50 push-ups in a row, and my shoulder came back to maybe 95% because I added more bulk and strength. I ended up drinking 100 grams of protein a day. I ended up taking creatine. I strengthened all the muscles around the shoulder
Right.
to the point where maybe it's even better today than it was before I injured it. And that's because I took responsibility and took my life back into my hands. And this is one of the things I teach is that as long as we want to be a victim, we won't be happy. But as soon as we choose what we can do about it, we feel better.
Right. And a different way of saying it, the way I say it is, and I'll change it because instead of talking about loss yet again here on the podcast, I'll just say your situation. You can define your situation or it can define you. And I choose to define my situation. And certainly I had absolutely no responsibility. I was a victim when my sister was killed. Uh, if you participate in any kind of a sport, basketball, riding your mountain bike, whatever, you can and at some point will fall off your bike.
Yeah,
Um,
you are going to get injured. It's
yeah,
not a matter of if I get injured playing basketball. It's when will I get injured playing
absolutely.
basketball?
But here's the thing, Matt. Would you rather hurt yourself playing basketball, or for me, being active, riding my mountain bike, or something have a heart attack because I sat on the couch because I was afraid I was going to get hurt. I'd rather be on my mountain bike and say, well, I kind of wrecked my shoulder, and down the road I'll probably have to have a shoulder replacement, but boy howdy, did I do it good.
Hell yeah. And my mom, hey, just to give you some relief on this, my mom is 76
Yeah,
and she's super active. She was always doing like step classes, aerobic classes, lifting weights. And then in her older age, she started to do yoga and was doing headstands, all this stuff, right? She ends up ruining her right shoulder and needed full shoulder replacement where they couldn't just do normal shoulder replacement. They
they
had to
did the
do
reverse.
reverse, right?
Yeah,
And she moved in with my wife and I. My wife had to shower her, right?
yeah,
So we got real close to my mom because,
yeah,
you know, shoulder replacement surgery is a big deal.
yeah,
It's a big surgery. But now we're 6 months out from that surgery, and I'm like, Mom, how's this shoulder? And she's like, it is so good.
yeah,
She's like, I've got all my strength back, and she's picking the kids up, and she's doing her yoga again. So just so you know, even if you do have to go down that road, like the technology on shoulder replacement surgery is fantastic. But
yeah,
this is me again helping us define our life and our reality.
yeah,
Because if we define my life is going to be the greatest it can be, regardless of what's happening or what will happen, then guess what? It's going to be the greatest it can be.
right. And you know, here's the thing about whatever your epic journey is. For me, the words EPIC stand for every pilgrimage includes commitment. And whether it's writing a book, you've written a book, I've written 3 books, it's not that is definitely a pilgrimage, right? And I use pilgrimage not so much in the, you know, religious sense, but more that you're on this long journey and there is struggle, there is doubt, there is all of that, but at the end, oh, is it great when you finally got done. And I don't know about you, but for me, the editing of the book was twice as hard as the writing of the book, because I had to read my books like 6 times because they proofread it and you go through and you read it. I got done. I got done with my epic book and I was like, I know what I've said in there, but I don't actually want to reread my book for a month or two, because I just spent, a month and a half reading every word multiple times. It's not to
Right.
say I don't love my book, but like anything, if you just read the same book 6 times, you're kind of like, yeah, I kind of I need a break from that for just a moment.
I was the other way. I obsessed. It took me 4 years to write my book because I obsessed about creating a book that I could stand behind as the greatest work I could produce. And I also wanted, because my book is about how to get out of the 8 destructive moods that
Sure.
sabotage our happiness. I wanted to fully experience all 8 moods and find my way out so that I knew my teaching wasn't just theory,
Yeah.
that it was actual. This is what you do to get out of anger. This is what you do to get out of debilitating fear. This is how you get out of the destructive emotion of feeling rejected and shameful.
Mm-hmm.
And so my book, it just took me a long time because I wanted to experience all of what I needed to experience to teach it. The second half of the book, is the 8 good moods that I want to live in. Well, the
Definitely.
highest aspirational moods are feeling love and compassion all the time. And I'm like, man, I don't always feel loving and compassionate. And I felt inauthentic. I said, I can't write a chapter about how to feel loving and compassionate and empathetic all the time if I don't feel that way. So I had to grow my compassion, empathy, and love. It took me a year to just grow my compassion that high to where I could write a chapter about how to live compassionate all the time. So anyway, one of the other moods I wanted to talk about that you had hit on earlier was this feeling of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the 8 moods I talk about living a really happy life.
Sure.
And there's things that we can certainly do to strengthen our confidence. And you do all of these things. But the things that destroy our confidence are anxiety and stress and self-doubt, kind of the journey we take on that pilgrimage that you're talking about.
Right.
But what we want to do is we want to work to grow our confidence. And so the first step to growing our confidence, all confidence is, if you think about it, confidence is saying, I believe I can get the outcome I want.
Mm-hmm.
I have confidence. I believe in myself that I can do what I say I'm going to do. Well, the foundation of self-belief is keeping the promises you make to yourself. We are all guilty of breaking our promises to ourselves more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we don't follow through on what we tell ourselves we're going to do, we believe ourselves less the next time we tell ourselves we're going to do something. So a simple example is we say, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to run 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thought we'll have. Okay. If we stayed up late watching movies on Netflix, didn't sleep well, we get a little bit of a cold, we have a crick in our neck. It's so easy the next morning say, not today.
Yeah.
I'll do the gym thing another day.
Yeah.
Every time we break that promise, that commitment that we had to ourselves, we erode our self-confidence because we don't think we can trust ourselves.
Right.
So one of the foundations for me of good moods is being very careful with the commitments I make to myself, because I know that if I make a commitment, I have to follow through on that commitment. Well, when we keep these small commitments, like going to the gym, even when we don't feel like it, we now keep the big commitments. Like, I'm going to finish the book, or I'm going to start the podcast, or I'm going to get this year-long goal, because we start to believe that anything we say we're going to do, we're going to actually do it.
Right. And I talk about all the time that a couple of things here. First of all, don't be afraid to fail, because we are going to fail at things in our life. And the example I like to give that helps make it real for people is say, in baseball, you make it in the Hall of Fame if you have a lifetime batting average of over 300. So imagine this, Matt. Let's say you're working for 9 hours, and for you to have a Hall of Fame day, you only got to get it right 3 hours out of that day, and you got a Hall of Fame day. Who of us doesn't want to go, I only got to get 1/3 of it right today, and I've had a great day. And I think sometimes it is a perspective. Look, as an entrepreneur, I'm a generous man. I have spent money on productivity tools and marketing tools and stuff, and then I end up not using them, or they're not the right thing. It's not that they're bad; they're just not the right thing for me. But the only way I'll know what is or isn't going to work is by trying it, making a commitment, saying, I'm going to do this. But I also accept that there are things I'm going to fail at things. That's okay. That is life, right?
I agree with you. And we're all afraid of failure.
Of course
All
we
of
are.
us. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of looking bad in the eyes of others. It's actually the number one thing that keeps us from going after our dreams, is that we're afraid that we'll fail and people will look at us as if we are failures.
How about this one, Matt? Sadly, the meanest person in your life is you.
Not me.
Well, okay, maybe not
Not
you.
me, not me, because I've done the work. But I
I
know what you're
know.
saying, Xander. And this is I'm correcting you because it's not, and it was when I was
Yeah.
in my 20s. I was my harshest critic.
Yeah.
No longer. And so this is one of the foundational things I teach everyone, because everyone is their harshest critic except for me.
Yeah.
I started a practice 15 years ago that changed everything about the way I talk to myself, and it's so simple. Every morning, the first thing I do, well, it's not the very first thing I do, but one of the first things I
Sure.
do is I write down 3 things I did well the day before.
Sure.
It takes less than 5 minutes. I will not miss a day because it makes this big of a difference in my life. When our mind says, you messed that up, you said that stupid thing, oh my gosh, I can't believe you forgot to do that. Our mind is always saying what we didn't do well. That's what our mind's job is. It thinks that if it points out all the things we're doing poorly, that we can make them better. Well, I said, screw that. I want to tell my mind what I'm doing great at. So every
Absolutely.
morning I say, well, guess what? Yesterday I did a fantastic workout and I did it with my wife. And then yesterday I made dinner for my whole family and I let my wife take a break, and that was awesome. And then yesterday I coached my team and I helped them through a really challenging situation our industry is going through. That was my 3 things this morning.
Yep.
Well, doing that every single day, you know what starts to happen? As I'm doing things well, like that 3 out of 10 you were talking about that Lou Gehrig might have,
Yeah.
as I'm hitting the ball 3 out of 10
Yeah.
times, I'm like, good job, man. I'm clapping for myself because I'm
Absolutely.
noticing what I'm doing right. And then this is what's happened that's been amazing is I start to notice what everyone else is doing right in the world. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, you're doing that great. You're doing
Yeah.
that great. All of this, that harsh critic that I used to be on myself has
Hmm.
completely gone away because I affirm what I do well rather than tell myself what I didn't do well.
Absolutely. You know, yeah. I mean, and that goes into, I call that the 97-3 rule, which is that 97% of your day, Matt, is actually going really well, and up to 3% isn't. And I came up with that because when I was doing my internship for my mental health license, I was in middle school. I was doing middle school and high school students. I was counseling them, and I heard them come in and they're complaining about all the things that are wrong. And then I'm always, I don't know, my mind works from like, how can I shift that, help them shift how they're seeing things? And so I asked them, what's your least favorite subject in school? And a lot of them said math. And I'm like, I get that. And I said, okay, if you got a 97 on your next test, how would you feel? Oh my gosh, I'd be so excited. I'd tell my parents would be proud of me. I'd tell all my friends. I'm like, great. Would you complain about the 3 points you didn't get? Are you kidding? I got a 97. This is, it's great. I'm like, yeah. So in your day, why are you just focused on that 3% that isn't going right? Just like you said, the things I didn't do right or whatever, when there's so much, an overwhelming amount of stuff you did do right. Matt, you and I got up this morning. That's a really good thing. Here we are getting to do this podcast together. That's an awesome thing. Dare I say, epic.
It is epic, right? And then the person, if you're listening to this podcast today, you put on something inspiring. Pat yourself on the back. We don't give ourselves credit. Xander, I totally agree with you, man. We do not give ourselves credit for how many things we do well every day.
I know.
Putting food on the table for your family, getting yourself dressed and going to the office when maybe you don't really feel like it. Like these are things that we have to pat ourselves on the back and say, great job today.
Yeah.
No one else is telling us that they're proud of us. It's our job to tell ourselves that we're proud of us.
Well, you got to be your number one cheerleader. Because
Totally.
how can anyone else support you if you aren't supporting yourself, right?
Man, I'll tell you what, dude, you and I are so alike, man. I'm so glad that I've had a chance to meet you. And It's always fun to talk to somebody that values shifting their perspectives to the happier side like I do.
Absolutely. No, this has been great. You and I have been going on for quite a while here, Matt. I have had a fantastic time, and I want to thank you so much. How can people get a hold of you? How can they find out about the eight things for happiness?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is to get the book on Amazon. It's Good Mood Revolution, or plug into the podcast, which is also Good Mood Revolution. And
Ooh.
if somebody is like saying, man, I need to take this further, I really need some help figuring out how to make my life the most happy it can be, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and you can just get that at mattoneil.com.
Awesome. Matt, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This has been just incredible. Certainly 2 peas in a pod here. So that's
totally, dude.
just been so much fun. I want to remind everyone that you can find my information at epicbegins.com. And if you go there now, you can get a free ebook of my Epic Begins with One Step Forward. And as always, I want to remind people that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book Epic Begins with One Step Forward at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.